listen.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Getting on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
All right, there's no human being on the planet I'd rather have on the podcast right now than Eric Hosmer. Fact. Fact.
I love that.
At the Real Haas 305. Man, you got it rolling. You got it rolling. How are you? First of all, how are you?
Doing great, Rob. And it's I'm having fun, man. I really am. I'm I want to stay involved in the game, obviously, somehow. And I've been getting to be able to share my perspective online, getting to do some stuff like this. So it's been a lot of fun for me, a lot different too.
So Diggin Deep podcast is the podcast. Peter Moylan is also one of your co-hosts, and it is awesome. It is. And, the first thing I want to talk about, Eric, and I sat down with Mookie on last year, and we were going to just do a quick whatever. And we ended up doing, 25 minutes just on podcasting, just on a player podcasting, because I am like, and one of the things, I'll start here, is that one of the things that Mookie said, which really hit home for me, was that it made me, doing the podcast, made me a better communicator, a better listener, because, and the way that I said to him was, yeah, I get it, Mook. Like, the fact is that you stand in front of your locker, you're trying to do what you're doing, but you want to answer the questions and get out.
Right.
And it's boom, 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 boom. There's no conversation. There's no back and forth. And you were always great. Like, in the brief time that I covered you, and I know that other people talking about you, you're always great with the media, but still, have you had the same perspective in that way doing the podcast?
Yeah, it's something that it's kind of like baseball. You release the episodes, you go back and watch, and you try and critique yourself as well, and try and find ways to be better. And like you said, you learn a lot. You listen, you get to have these conversations, so it's a lot of fun. And listen, I think the player-driven side is something new for baseball. I think as a whole, there's a lot more media nowadays. I think there's certain media members that players really, really respect and really enjoy talking to. And I think it's a mutual respect there. I think the player knows that certain media member is trying to cover the game in a way that the interest is real. They want to give the fans their insight. They're there every day. So they pick up on certain things and they want to learn. And then, on the flip side of that, there's, a lot of media now that just kind of throws stuff out there with no substance or really no, research behind it. So it's fun because now I get to interact with guys like yourself that I've respected for a long time, and we get to have those in-depth conversations that we couldn't have at the locker. And at the same time, the other side of it, I get to kind of ask them, all right, let's talk about it. Let's learn about this ourselves. Let me give you the player side. You give me your side. And then we go from there. And it's been, it's been a lot of fun, especially on X, especially on some of these platforms, just interacting back and forth with fans.
So another thing that Mookie said, he's getting outside the comfort zone. Your comfort zone was being a really, really good baseball player and finding the rhythms of that. And then you take this step, I want to talk about how you actually dove in, like how you said, okay, let's do it. And then the idea of, I'm doing this. This is not a comfortable thing because I've never done it. It's just like anything new we do. So if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I had some stuff that happened throughout my career where I was like, man, I really wish I can go in depth and really explain what's happening and what's going on to the fans. And I just never really had that platform or never really had that opportunity. So for me, this was something that, I really got motivated with last year in Chicago. Right when I got released there at the end of May, it was, a couple months there of just watching the game, just following along, understanding what's happening. And a buddy of mine owned a production company, and we had always talked about really combining forces to try and do something like this when the playing days were over. And, there's a lot of players around the league that I really, really respect, a lot of guys that I've played with and have nothing but the utmost respect for. So, starting to see some of the articles late last year about certain guys that I didn't feel were true or, really painting the picture for that player all the way to what it should be, motivated me to say, hey, let's get this moving. Let's find a way to, be able to do this right. So Anthony and I, who I played with in the minor leagues with the Royals, have been, plotting this and really trying to do this right since last year around June. And, we were trying to get everything ready to go for spring training, trying to get ready to launch everything. And yeah, it's been in motion now, and it's been a lot of fun. I really have been enjoying it. Like you said, it's definitely outside the comfort zone, having to talk a lot, having to put yourself out there on social media and all that type of stuff. But it's something that I'm really taking a liking to and hope to continue to do.
What are you better at now than when you first started?
Listening, like you said in the first
Isn't it
part,
amazing? It's like we're all this way. I mean,
yeah, and it's sometimes you listen to respond, or like you have your response right away, but sometimes you listen throughout the whole entire answer. You get that question, so really just listening and just taking time to ask the questions that come up from the conversations.
Can I tell you this, Eric? So you obviously you're new with the you're talking about a podcast, but you've seen also when young writers, I don't want to paint like with a broad brush, but young writers, they have the pad, they're going to go through the list. They're not listening. They're getting through their questions. They're not listening. I think this is the biggest problem with whether it's reporting, not the biggest, but one of the biggest problems with reporting or really podcast. I see it with podcasters too. It's just like, okay, we have a couple of things we want to talk about. Let's talk about it.
Right. Exactly. And that's a big thing too, is like you said, it's the reporters there, they're writing on their notepad while you're giving an answer. Sometimes headlines can, be out of context. You kind of don't know the tone of voice that the person used for it. So the setting that we have for Digging Deep is cool. You turn it on, people are sitting down having a conversation. Guys have had cocktails on there with us. We're just kind of having a good time and just talking about, our path to the big leagues, when we had adversity at some point in time in our life, how we responded, certain people, how they helped along the way, how they can help. So it just really tells the full story. It lets the player tell their full story. And I think the setting as well, to be able to have fans see the player in a different setting, not just in the uniform, emotional after or before a game, I think just gives a different perspective and a unique one for people to see.
By the way, you hit on the big three: comfortable chair, right? Alcohol, preferably.
Yeah.
And this, and I always say this is that when I have Bogarts on, I always said this, like when Bogarts 12 minutes in, he swears. I'm like, all right, here we go. You're in the rocking chair. That's a couple guys talking. So yeah.
That's it. No more fun.
No, big three of podcasts. You just want, and that's one of the great things about this, and is just the comfort level of the conversation. And I just want to say you do a really, really good job. I've seen.
Thank you.
There's so many podcasts, obviously, and now you're seeing a lot of and you see it too. The players who really weren't that media friendly. Like, I got to do something. I will do a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially with baseball, you're taught to be guarded. You're taught to not cause distractions, to keep answers simple, to do things one way. And I'm at the point in time now in my career where, my playing career is over. So I can now kind of share some insight with fans, share some perspective. And, Xander's a great point you bring up. Had a pretty solid year last year in San Diego. Obviously not Xander's best year. And then this year, the end of April, got off to a rough start, and just kind of communicating with San Diego fans, like, listen, I got to play with this guy a couple months in Boston. This guy is the real deal, not only on the field, everything that he does behind the scenes, the work he puts in. I mean, this guy is a guy you want on your team. So it was fun to be able to challenge that fan base to say, listen, let this play out throughout the whole year. And if it doesn't happen over the course of 162, then we can go to the drawing boards and figure out what he's got to change or what he's got to adjust on. But just little interactions like that. It's something fun. It's something that Xander doesn't have the time to go out and try and explain his side, explain his story. He's in the middle of the season. He's got to work. So it's something that I'm really taking pride in doing for the players, and just trying to continue to shine light on these guys, because what they're doing, like, is not easy at all. And, the day-to-day, you're going to go through the ups and downs, and it's just a tough game in general. So I get to kind of just inform fans and, just take the ride along with them.
All right, so it's a good segue to a couple of things that we want to talk about. I do want to talk about clubhouse leadership because Eric, I've said this before. Strom was like, the guy is Hosmer. He's the guy. He's the guy. When we talk about, I think I told you that when you were in the clubhouse. But anyway, I want to get to that. But you had already mentioned guys getting called up, and we can sort of morph this with the social media stuff. Guys getting called up now. You look at especially I think the position player, and in the last week, Pedroia was on. Pedroia talked about how different it was when he got called up. It's different than when you get called up. Part of that is the social media. Part of that is people saying how great you are or how bad you suck. Part of that is more analytics than ever. All of this. But I would be fascinated to get your take, because obviously Jackson Holiday is sort of the poster boy for this right now. But there's so many more. It's really a thing which it's become science, where you get called up, you struggle, you go back down, you come back, and there you go. But and then, not to keep going on, but Eric, the other part about it is how you're treated in the clubhouse. Like how for better or for worse. Maybe it's different. I don't know. So give me your perspective on that, if you could.
Yeah, I certainly believe in, clubhouse culture, and to me, it's almost each team, you want to have a system. You want to have kind of something on how you prepare, that the hitters prepare one way, the pitchers. I truly believe the clubhouse culture, you have to have some kind of leader in each asset of the game, the bullpen, the starting rotation, the position players, all that stuff. Because when you're a young player, especially nowadays, there's so many numbers, there's so many different things thrown at you that it can be overload. It's like, man, do I have to do this? You want to, please everybody. Do I have to go and do this, or do I have to go and watch this? And it's something that you truly don't need or don't believe in to prepare for a game. But when you go into a system and you have guys like Dustin Pedroia, you have guys that are veterans that have been on the team for a long time, and they can pull you aside and say, listen, this is what we need you to do. You're hitting leadoff in front of me and David Ortiz. We need you to get on base. So now each pitcher we have, there's going to be breakdowns. There's going to be scouting reports. This is what you do well. This is what he does well. So this is what we want to hone in on. And I think when you have that leadership, when you have that culture in the clubhouse, it gives the young player the ability to really, really simplify whatever the game plan, whatever the approach is. With a lot of different things being thrown at you, and you don't have that culture, you don't have that chemistry or that leader, a young player can get real confused, really not know what their value is and what they're there for. So to me, the older player, the veteran guy, even some coaches, they really simplify that. They identify what the value is for the young player, what we need you to do on this team to be successful. So that just gives the player a really clear picture, a clear goal, and what they need to do to stick in the big leagues for that team to be successful.
All right, cliche question. Do you think it's valued enough?
No, but at the end of the day, I don't know how to value it. It's one of those things where, how do you put value on that, specifically a number? I think it is valuable. I don't know how you pinpoint it, but there is value to having a fourth outfielder that's a veteran presence that can be on the bench with this young prospect, or in the cage during the game when you see a pitcher warming up. Okay, this guy's a 2-pitch guy, but he's in there to pitch to get you with a slider. This is going to be the approach. Let's take some swings in the cage to get ready for this at bat, or a situation, especially obviously there's no pitcher hitting anymore. But before that, it was huge because you go down to the tunnel. If you're not starting in the game around the 4th or 5th inning, there's obviously some bullpen matchups late in the game where, there's certain spots that the coach is going to pinch hit for. So to have that guy down there, getting the young guy ready, getting him prepared is something that is extremely valuable. And I think it's big differences when you have culture and when you have teams that do it right. You have that guy that's doing that. When you don't, it's kind of an ambush job where you're sitting there and all of a sudden it's like, hey, Hosmer, go hit against this guy or go on deck. And, everything can feel rushed. Everything can feel like it's speeding up on you. So, there's points and times throughout the seasons where you really need guys to point out certain things to happen to these young guys so they can learn from it. And that just doesn't happen again, or if it's a good experience, you learn from it and you can continue to grow.
And you had said, I think Raul Banez was one of those guys for you, right?
Yeah, he was incredible, and he was 40-something years old when he was with us in the Royals, 20-year career, which was unbelievable. But even with Boston, it stunk with Boston because I got hurt and I didn't, get to really be out there and feel like I was competing with the guys. But in Chicago, I felt like I had that role of being the older guy that wasn't playing every day. So one thing Raul always did was really, look to grab someone each day and really just try and make a difference and try and find something to teach them that happened the night before or something along those lines. And I tried to do that in Chicago as much as possible. It was a good, fun, young group over there. And, I think that role really led to me doing this, was wanting to expand on continuing to help those guys and continue to help more guys than just the guys that are in my phone book or guys that I've, gotten to play with over the years.
Well, that's the thing. It comes back to getting outside your comfort level.
Yeah.
I mean, in this podcast, Eric, it's sure I can lean into the Pedroias and these guys I've known forever, but I've got an opportunity because it's a national thing. I've got an opportunity to talk to a lot of different people about a lot of different things, and it's not always comfortable. It's not like I can joke around with guys I know, but you also, like you said, you're talking to people about hard conversations that are important conversations that maybe they haven't talked about, or maybe you haven't talked about. And that sort of also goes to the clubhouse, where when you get to Boston, for instance, I mean, you were there 2 months, but hey, I don't really know you. I can't even remember like what young player would be there, but hey, I just want to show you this. All of this is coming out the comfort level, right? Comfort zone, right?
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think there's a lot of times when I was a young player, I learned throughout, my time with certain coaches, with certain managers, that certain things need to come player to player. There's certain things that a coach can really, really try and harp on, and it just doesn't really get through to a young player. But when you have a guy like Raul Ibanez, where, 2 years before playing with him, I'm watching him hit big homers in Yankee Stadium in the ninth inning and hitting walk-offs left and right and all this type of thing. So to me, it's like, all right, Raul, take me to what you were thinking in that ninth inning. Were you anticipating a pitch? Were you just, what were you doing? So for me, that's stuff that really hits home, especially with young players, of when that comes from player to player. And I think now, other sports, you're seeing a lot of guys in basketball, a lot of guys in football really walk through certain situations, certain scenarios, whether it was a game or whether it was something that happened off the field, with a contract negotiation or whatnot. And just being able to hear them go through that, kind of explain that whole entire process, is something that I really think is interesting and is fun to watch. And, I think it's a lot of things similar to that happen in baseball, and we really just kind of hear one side of it. So I think now to be able to hear not only from a former player, but for players themselves, and hopefully, agents and hopefully GMs, to hear their point as this thing grows, I think will be really cool for the fan to really dive into that.
Have you been surprised? Like, maybe this goes back to playing. Maybe you're surprised at how receptive a player is. Have you been surprised at how receptive your guests are? I know that's like, you want to have good podcasts, you want to have good conversations, you want to be able to, when you're playing, to be able to pull the kid aside and for it to hit him to seep in. But have you been surprised about like the impact of this, I guess?
Yeah, and that was one thing that was really hard for me in the beginning, was to ask people to come on. I think without kind of painting a picture, without them seeing what it was or what the podcast was trying to accomplish, it was really hard, especially in spring training. Guys are, their schedules are busy. Guys are moving, their families are moving, coming to see them, going. They're trying to find houses to buy, rent, all that type of stuff. So those guys that really came out in Arizona for that second round of episodes, the Ron Washingtons, the Moustakas, the Perez, all those guys really, really helped us a lot, because I think now a lot of current players are being able to see kind of what the goal of the podcast is, what the atmosphere, what everything looks like. And I think it's starting to spark a little bit of interest for the players to come on and maybe share something that they're passionate about. That's the thing with baseball, is there are so many topics, especially in the major league game right now, that we can talk about, whether it's the new age analytics, whether it's the grips of the pitchers, the bat speed, new metrics. There's so many different things that you can really talk about. So it's fun. You get to bring these players in, hear what they like to go into, and just continue to dig deeper into that story.
All right. I'm going to spin the wheel at Hosmer. And before I told you that I do want to get a player or former player podcaster perspective on the Angel Hernandez news. You talked about Angel Hernandez.
Yeah.
We've had Jim Joyce on, and Jim was, this is a brotherhood, the umpire. But before we do that, you brought up a bunch of things. We've been talking about pitchers' injuries. The bat speed thing is fascinating to me, right?
Mhm.
Holy mackerel, the guy with the worst bat speed is the best hitter in baseball. All right, let's do that. Let's do that one. Like, in terms of the analytics that we're just like, what? All right, bat speed. I don't know where you measured on this. I don't know. But what's when you see something like this coming out and everyone's freaking out, isn't this great bat speed? And then you see, wait a second, the best hitter in baseball has the worst bat speed. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess it kind of relates back to putting a value on that veteran leader, right? I mean, there's stuff in hitting that you just can't quantify. There's approach, there's pitch to pitch adjustments, there's plans, there's all different things that make hitters hitters. And I think one of the things I saw today is another thing about the bat speed, and it's someone talking about how, wow, it's amazing, when these professional hitters get two strikes, the average bat speed goes down 2 miles an hour. And it's like, yeah, no shit. This is called a two-strike approach. You know what I mean? You have to, obviously, you can't anticipate a pitch. You have to see it a little longer. You have to see it a little deeper. And you're not going to swing as hard because that's the situation you're in. So when you see a guy like Luis Ariz who doesn't have the bat speed, but a guy's on first and he knows he wants to pull the ball because there's a big hole over there, certain things you just can't quantify. That's his approach. When you see a guy like Luis Ariz who has an at bat off a guy, he gets a hit off of a slider that was nasty down and away, and the next time up, he comes and gets another hit on a first pitch fastball. He then knows this is what I'm going to see because I just hit his slider in a perfect spot, so he feels he can't get away with it. It's just stuff like that the player is sitting back, looking at this stuff, reading this stuff like, wait, there's so much more to this. But I truly believe now that the fans look at this stuff and they're like, wow, this is the whole story. This is what it is. And honestly, I think that's why, like yourself, I have a big passion of being like, wait, there's way more to this, and gives us the opportunity to dive into this and explain more on it.
Yeah, I've heard in spring training, I was even talking to guys, and this isn't, I don't want to crap on drive line or anything, but a lot of the drive line is bat speed, bat speed, bat speed, let's go.
Right.
Really, there were some guys that wasn't their problem.
Mm-hmm.
Different approach. That was it. And so this is, I think, the issue that we're coming with baseball a lot, which is one size fit all. Even like the sweeper, right? We when we were doing how do pitchers get injured, Ben McDonald said, I asked 4 guys who tried to learn sweepers, and they said, no, thanks, my elbow started hurting.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's another problem in baseball, right?
Yeah, it is. And that's something similar that I said as well. And it's nothing to knock against Driveline, but it's one of those situations where kids are learning on the internet, kids are learning, via text messages or communication, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever it is. And is it something that like we need to have eyes on you? You have to go and do this the right way, to have the right form. Me and you can get under the squat rack and have terrible form and be sore for a month or two, but it's all about the form. If someone's there watching you and we're doing it correctly, then we'll benefit from it. So that's kind of my question with all of it. But on the hitting side of it, yes, you do want to have bat speed. You do want to be quick through the zone. But when you go and chase bat speed, I think that takes away from the technique of hitting. Obviously you're going to muscle up, you're going to get tight and tense, and you're really going to try and, swing hard through the zone. And hitting is not all about that. You almost want to swing quick. You don't want to swing hard. So when you're chasing something, a metric like bat speed, you can create a lot of bad form, technique, mechanics from that. So, yes, you do want bat speed, but the ways that guys are chasing it isn't really the right way to go about it.
Excellently put. All right. Second to last thing, Angel Hernandez. We said you talk about things in the news. What's your thoughts? Your thoughts on Angel Hernandez?
Yeah, so this is going to be an unpopular take, but Angel actually is a friend. He's a family friend growing up in South Florida. I've actually played baseball with his nephew throughout the years. It's just something that, listen, there's umpires that we feel aren't good. There's umpires we feel that are good. But at the end of the day, there's umpires that are great dudes. There's umpires that we really don't like. Angel was one of those guys I really enjoyed talking to. I thought he was a great dude. Obviously, I felt like there was a couple times where he got me on a strike 3 that was a little further than I thought. But, at the end of the day, I think the umpiring situation is a tough one because, we have to have some kind of accountability. And I think not only to identify the bad ones, but to identify the good ones as well and try and create some kind of, incentive or something to motivate umpires. As a player, there's no worse feeling than hitting on the road in that last group of batting practice where it ends about 5:15, 5:30, and you see the four umpires strolling in, about to get ready for a game, because there is so much that they need to go over, so much information that they need to know, especially if they have the plate. So for me, I want to feel that the guy that's having the plate that night is prepared. But I tell you what, Angel certainly made a big remark on the game, because a lot of people are talking about his retirement right now, and a lot of people are, certainly getting the internet cranked up from him stepping away from the game.
I'm glad you said that, Eric. I honestly am. It's obviously everyone making their memes and their comments and everything else. Dude, let the guy go. Let the guy, but
Yes.
it's a good perspective. And by the way, with the umpiring, I don't know how you feel, like going back to Pat Holberg of a couple of years ago when he had the perfect. So this is another thing. When we get to the most important games, you said measuring the umpires.
Yes.
Like, okay, let's have better. You were in the World Series a couple times.
Yes.
Let's have the best guys. And I don't know if you could have the guy who is in the zone like Pat Holberg was and do every time behind the plate. I don't know if you can do that, but that has to adjust, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah, why not? Why? I mean, I don't care if Pat's umpiring third or second base. I'd rather him just give him the off day and give him the plate every other day, especially in a playoff game. But Pat's a guy that, he's from the same town, and I might be getting this name wrong, so if I am, help me. But the big umpire was it Lloyd McClellan, who had he had kind of the silent strike call. He was one of the best in the league. I know Pat is from the same town as him, so Pat has done a lot of work with him in the offseason, tried to really help him control his strike zone the best. And Pat would always talk about he tries to have his head move as little as possible, because if your head's moving, obviously the ball's coming in very fast. It's hard to see like that. But the big thing with Pat is Pat prepares. Pat is truly trying to be the best he can be. And having conversations, especially with guys like Angel, a lot of the older umpires really got thrown off because they had their way of calling a game for X amount of years, however long they were in the league for. Now, the way they get graded out is a grid. And then the grid is there, the strike zone, and it's about, I don't know what, a ball and a half off of it. And if you go outside of that grid, that knocks from your card, that knocks from your score. So in talking to older guys like Angel, a lot of the things that threw them off were, if a guy set up away and missed their spot, and it might have been a strike inside, but they didn't miss their spot, the old umpires would kind of just wave that off and whatever, ball's a ball. Now they get a little they get nicked on their score, and that's something that they don't want. They want to grade out well. So that's kind of something that a lot of older umpires have voiced is kind of, getting in their heads a little bit. But it's a hard job. It's something I wouldn't want to do. But I will say again with Angel, maybe not the best performer as far as the balls and strikes or stuff on the plate or stuff in the field, but he truly did care. And especially talking to him throughout the years, if he missed a call the night before, he would try and find you the next day, kind of go through it with you. So as a player, you live with some bad calls for sure. You hope that they didn't happen to you, but I think at the end of the day, when you see the umpires care and they're trying their hardest, I think you respect that.
See, that's as you're talking, I'm like, if anyone wants to find a podcast that offers a very, very good perspective, and I'm not just saying this because you're on, like, I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. The Diggin Deep podcast, I'm telling you, to have that conversation and to take it to the place that you did is important. And I think it's not just sort of baseline surface level. It's important.
Yes.
It is.
No, it is. And it's fun. And trust me, I know you guys from Boston are not afraid to speak your minds, especially if someone is in front of you. I learned that a lot from being there. But yeah, it's fun too, because even watching all these games as a fan, it's like, okay, Paul Skeens is getting called up. It's Thursday. The game's on Saturday. I'm like, okay, is this game going to be on national TV? Am I going to be able to watch this game? So there's so many different things that pop up, and I have all these questions, and it's stuff as a player I'd never even really understood was going on just because you're in the middle of the grind.
Yeah. Well, we're here to educate, inform, and entertain.
Right.
The last thing is the Wasabi hot cloud storage, hot or not, or hot. Going to movies by yourself is the best. Hot or not?
Oh man, maybe at a younger age I can say that's hot, but man, now having a kid and having a wife and a family, if I'm going to the movies solo, I don't know what's going on with me. That's so I'm gonna go not as this day and how how I stand today.
That's all fair. That's all fair. It's a very
Perfect.
polarizing topic. Eric, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Again, Dig a Deep podcast. Yeah, it's there's a lot of things that pop up this for the betterment of the game, and your podcast and your voice is one or a couple of them. So excellent job.
Appreciate you, Rob. Same to you and your podcast. Appreciate you having me on.